Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Barr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your vigilance in pursuing the truth in this committee. And thank you to our witnesses. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for your service to our country. And thank you for doing what many in our government did not do, which is to work to help those who helped the United States in our fight against radical Islamic terrorism when we were there in Afghanistan. And some call this a chaotic withdrawal. Others call it an unconditional retreat. However you want to characterize it, it was a disgraceful episode and a failure of leadership to see 13 U.S. service members needlessly killed at Kaya because we didn't choose to use Bagram as a better alternative for extraction, and put our young men and women, many Marines, in a terrible situation, and our Afghan allies in a terrible situation, leading to not only leaving behind $7 billion worth of U.S. equipment in the hands of the Taliban, but leaving behind more than 800 American citizens and tens of thousands of our Afghan allies remaining there in jeopardy at the hands of bloodthirsty Taliban enemy after the last U.S. military aircraft departed August 31, 2021. Lieutenant Colonel Mann, this has been asked and probably answered in this lengthy hearing already, but based on your experience in the country, do you think it would have been a more effective plan to execute a withdrawal out of Bagram as opposed to Kaya?
Congressman, I do think it would have been more effective and more tenable to utilize Bagram as a platform for NEO.
Mr. Hong, in your testimony, you discussed your efforts to get both Americans and Afghan allies on planes out of Mazar al-Sharif and the fact that it took 3 weeks before they were able to depart. Can you please let this committee know what led to that 3-week delay? Was the Taliban the biggest hurdle? Was the State Department helpful or hurtful? And how were you able to overcome those hurdles?
All those things were hurdles, Congressman. We did not have a adequately sourced plan as far as we could tell. We were operating in conditions that the State Department, frankly, was unsure, individuals in the State Department unsure of their authorities and their resources. We had to figure out ways to negotiate with the new Taliban government for departure. We managed to overcome those things using, frankly, financial resources, number one. Number two, operational experience of the volunteers gained from hard-earned time on the ground in Afghanistan. And then three, relationships.
Well, I just can't thank you enough for doing, again, what the State Department was not able to do or should have been doing. And finally, I want to read into the record a letter I received from a constituent Marine who served at Kaya August 17 to August 31, 2021, and who, because of his experience, ended his active service prematurely. He says, I was an infantry machine gun squad leader, 1st Battalion, 8th Marines Bravo Company. Our company was running security operations in North Gate, Kaya. Within my first 2 hours at the gate, I saw Afghan soldiers shooting civilians as a warning for the other civilians to stop trying to overrun our position. Main orders were to keep Afghan civilians under control because of threat of suicide bomber was high. We would have to fight with men, women, and children with non-lethal weapons, firing warnings, shots from our weapons, hand-to-hand combat fighting all day. I watched men step on and kill children to get entry to the airport. I watched women throw their dead children into a sewage canal, where we would also take dead civilians who had died due to injuries sustained by the Taliban. Our chain of a woman handed me her dead infant and asked me to help, but I couldn't. Our chain of command directed us to throw flashbang grenades at civilians to calm them down, and none of us had ever used flashbangs before. My fellow Marines and I were in charge of kicking out, turning away desperate civilians who didn't have proper paperwork. Men, women, and even children would beg my fellow Marines and me to kill them. I had to inform Afghan man with his wife, baby, and multiple children he had to leave. He grabbed my rifle and begged me to kill him and his family because his entire family would be raped and burned alive by the Taliban, and I threw him out. I did everything I could to get them through, but my command told me to kick them out. I hit an older man in the head with a baton on accident. and I saw his head dent and his eyes roll back. I saw a woman get shot in the chest about 10 yards away. I had to fight through the crowd to defend her while our Navy corpsman gave her medical aid. Her crying children were on top of her. I was helping beat people back to make space. A man ran up to me saying it was his sister, and I was so angry I threw the man and jumped on top of him. I was about to hurt him until someone stopped me. Civilians like this man would try to pretend they were family of someone injured, and they were so desperate for understandable reasons. I remember one lady in particular had 2 young daughters dropping to her knees crying and asking us to kill her kids before the Taliban could get to them. Based on procedures put in place by the command, I still had to kick them out. I remember her telling me when her daughters are raped repeatedly, it would be my fault. For this administration, for this White House, for this State Department to put our Marines, like this young constituent of mine, in that position, to put our allies, our Afghan allies in this position, to put our U.S. service members who were killed at HKIA in this position is a disgrace. It is a disgrace. And there needs to be accountability for my Marine constituent who is no longer a Marine. Disgraceful. Thank you all for telling the truth, because the truth that is coming out today because of your testimony, the truth that comes out from my constituent, a brave Marine put in that position, that tells the story of a failure of leadership. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.